Yes. Night, Timon. You're, you're the only person here. Yeah.
Honestly, I'm also busy.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, anyway, yun nga, as I keep announcing naman, I record this. No? So it would be easier for me if I'm talking to people, but at least there's you. um, it's just a bit disappointing, to be honest with you. Although, I totally understand because unlike the previous year, you're doing more classes sabay-sabay. Kasi nung quarter, it was shorter, but you had fewer classes at the same time. So probably many students prefer quarterly. Even though it's fast, at least you're only juggling fewer classes. So uh, yeah, okay lang, no worries.
How long will this class take?
An hour, maybe an hour tops. I mean, I won't. It wouldn't be super interactive because it's only you and me. One or two.
May kasama ka na.
Hi, sir.
Ayan.
Hello.
Hi. Hi. There's only three of us. But anyway, I will start in a minute, no, kasi I don't want to waste your time, no. Let's try to be done in an hour's time.
Yeah, and I'm also gonna finish my homework lang. I'm actually my orals. So yeah.
You are in your orals?
No, I'm finishing my preparation for orals.
Yeah. Anyway. Sige, I will start na, no. So anyway, again, good afternoon. Thank you for joining, no. Really appreciate it, no. Especially, I know that people are busy. I'm just a bit disappointed because I really I prepare for this class, but, but anyway, I post it naman so others can view it after. Just a few announcements, sayang, no, because I had a few announcements that can benefit everyone. So again, but yun nga, as I mentioned before, no, if they're absent and they fail to take note of things, no, that I discussed, kasalanan na nila. So, and thanks to you guys. If you want to further sort of broadcast or spread the word, no, the announcements, that's up to you, but that's not your responsibility. So I will not put that burden on you. No? Kasalanan nila if they don't attend. So just a few announcements, no? Suggested pace. So you should now, hopefully you're now in module 4. Cover that perhaps until November 20, no? And then the shortest module, module 5, maybe cover that from the remaining time that we have, November 22 to December 4. So just a reminder, although it's kind of weird if I'm reminding both of you now, because you guys always attend the sessions, and thank you. No? If you want to tell everyone, no, just in case they're lost, because I noticed some people, they log into my course at weird hours. No? So probably they're looking for the recording. Just if you know someone who's looking for the recordings, they're usually at the end of the corresponding module. So I will post this at the end of module 4, for example, plus the deck. Kasi even if you don't listen to the recording, probably as you've noticed, no, the decks themselves are already useful. Just a few announcements, no, and I've noticed this. No? Of course, I can't say who. some have reached out to me, either their family members or themselves have been infected by COVID. So, for example, if there's group work, no homework, assignment 2, no, is due almost at the end of the month, next month pala, November, don't be pushy and say, oh, we need to submit na. No? If they're recovering from COVID, especially if you know, no, give them a break. No? Don't push them too much. No? If you know someone who, your groupmate, for example, has COVID, or they need to take care of a family member has COVID, cut them some slack. Yun lang. As you've probably seen, there's an academic break next week, no? So no classes. You're not required to work. You know, sabi sa memo. So our next synchronous class will be held 2 weeks from now. So November 9. So upcoming schedules, because there is no synchronous class next week. The population, demography, and MSME development, I will combine them in one session. They're not long actually. The summary is just short. Then I will devote the entire session on November 16 for group consultations because the deadline is homework number 2. No? I will send an email, or no, I will send an announcement probably about this. Kasi I do expect that most or all groups would want to consult with me before you turn in your homework. But that is, again, optional. That is up to the group. If they feel like it's going to be a waste of time, okay lang din. Yeah, so again, the deadline, I will probably no longer extend this deadline. I announced this last week, no? So you roughly have 5 weeks to finish homework number 2. So please help each other, no, your group mates. No? There's 5 or 6 of you in the group. No? Just wanted to share with both of you and the entire class, no, whoever will be reviewing this. No? Your NSTP formator, si Ms. Brondo, reached out to me saying, Jay, some students are having a hard time. Well, ito muna, no, before I go to this. No? So having a hard time asking questions, no, regarding the link of SOCSI 13 to NSTP, especially the final integrated output. I just wanted to remind people that the big kiss interaction is not primarily to help you with outputs. No, it is really meant to be an immersion, an engagement experience with marginalized communities. So the output is a result. No, it is not your purpose. So it's not. You cannot be super extractive. It's like, oh, I need to ask this question just to satisfy certain outputs. No? So really, and in terms of, in general, no, the link to SOCSI 13 and the purpose really of your community online engagement, so whether it's online or not, or offline, no? You really want to get to know more about their development challenges. No? So think of Module 1, even Module 2, you know, APIS, some of those development challenges, and some of the more specific measurements. No? And maybe even the principles and paradigms in Module 3 and 4. No? So for example, value chains, human capital, manufacturing, focus on value addition, technology adoption, studying the market, making sure there's a market. So these are some of the links, no, that can probably help your thinking. No? And it may be good also to assess what's out there in the community. No? So this can be the basis of your guide questions. No? Who are the actors here there who are trying to help different families, communities. What community resources are out there? Kasi even if there are poor communities, sometimes there are assets that can be leveraged, no, for them, no, for the community to help each other out. So again, the important thing is don't go to Miss Brondo, hopefully, to complain, can we get guidance for SOCSI 13 output? No, well, yes, output is one thing, but you really want to immerse and engage, no? Just shoot the breeze with them, no? Treat it like a conversation and immersive experience, no? And at the same time, of course, you're getting information that would help you come out with Opman, Soxai 13, and LSTP because things, no. But in terms of maybe things to talk about, both for Soxai 13 and just to have a general conversation with them to deepen the discussion, I will share some guidelines, some useful documents, no, to help you out within the week. I'll share that as an announcement, perhaps. So just wanted to go through, no, and Miss Brondo, si Anna, Erica Brondo, already shared this with you, no, together with the schedules, no. I just wanted to highlight in red those that have clear linkages with SOCSI 13, because the others are generic intro or more related to your Opman. So what I'm looking for here, no, when I will be reading your final integrated output is it's the issues and opportunities, no, to what extent have you sort of analyzed them in SOCSI 13 lens, no, the development challenges we faced, the SDGs, the metrics that we went through in module 2, theories and concepts learned in SOCSI 13. And then here, no, the bulk of the output intervention really is more along your Opman, no, or optimizing certain, I think it's a micro or a small business. Then the important thing here is after you've gone through your Opman optimization suggestions, no, for SOCSI 13 and beyond, no, I also want to challenge your thinking. What other interventions do you think are needed in the community, whether that's macro, like national government providing some support, policy or program, or local governments, no? So both programs, policies, no? That you learn throughout SOCSI 13. No? So module 3, some strategies, module 4, especially agribusiness if it's agri-related, no? Or MSME development, no? Which is at the end of module 4. So just to connect it more clearly, no, to your final integrated output. So both of you, if you have questions, just let me know. All right, go ahead. You have a question?
Oh, yeah, yes, sir. I was asking po, for the intervention,
Mhm.
do we have to base kunwari, yung main intervention on the modules, or can we get creative again and source from scholarly articles as well?
You can.
Okay, sir.
As long as it matches the issues that they face. Kasi some people kasi they just basically went all out of the interventions, but they're not necessarily matched with the with what's happening on the ground.
Oh, okay.
Be matched, no? It has to be
All right,
matched.
sir. Thank you,
No
sir.
problem. Sure.
Okay.
All right. Just to go through the the lecture, no? So I will just be discussing one section of module 4, the second part, no, which is public finance and taxation. So this is also called economists or development practitioners call this fiscal policy also. No? When you say fiscal kasi, it sounds like a fancy term. No? Pero fiscal policy only means there's two sides to it. No? Either government, it's all about government, no? Government finances, no? Government earning money, no? Through revenues, taxes primarily, no? Or government spending money. So those are the two sides of public finance. No? Getting money, raising money, and then spending money. All right, so I don't know if either of you have gone through this on Canvas. No? So the main source really of government revenues are taxes. So there are two types of taxes, no? Just to differentiate. One is income tax. It's what we call so one is direct, no? And the perfect example here is income tax. Income tax is, for example, me or your parents, no? it depends, no? For example, kami, those earning regular salaries, we every April 15 or before that, no, we file some paperwork and we pay BIR, no. We line up either at the BIR office or in what they call authorized banks, and we remit that money directly to the tax bureau. So that's direct, no. I pay my taxes directly. I take a separate. I carve out some time. I create a separate activity just to pay taxes. And to differentiate, there is also what we call indirect taxes. No? And the good example here, no? The common example is value-added tax. No? Just to make it simple, no. So for example, you guys order a burger in McDonald's, no. So let's say for simplicity's sake, no, it's 100 pesos, quarter pounder. I'm sure it's more expensive. If you see the receipt, no, there's value added tax, VAT, no, 12%. So sabihin na natin that's 12 pesos out of the 100 peso burger. No? That 12 peso tax, no, I no longer have to remit that directly to BIR. Just by buying the burger, I'm already paying taxes. So no separate step. So that's why it's indirect, no? Indirect taxes. So value-added taxes are indirect because you don't need to line up to BIR at BIR or at any bank, no, just to remit the value-added tax. No? By you buying a good that has tax imposed on it, you're already paying the tax by virtue of your consumption. Direct naman, I have to physically file the tax return and give my money or my check, no, to pay the tax. Indirect is already, I pay taxes already as a result of my consumption. So no separate step just to remit my indirect tax. So just a few things now. I'm not sure if I included this on Canvas. No, I think I deleted these three things, no, because I wanted to make it shorter, no, kasi it was really long before. There are just three basic principles, no, for a country, no, to sort of adopt and apply, no, to have a good tax system. First is capacity to pay, and that has to be progressive, no. Basically, this only means that those who have more or those who are earning more have better capacity to pay. So if you go through our tax table, no, there's a tax schedule, no, for BIR. It was revised a few years ago, no, through the train law. So it's basically for those earning 250,000 a year and below, no tax, 0%. Then 250 to 500, there's I don't know, I forget, 10% yata. Then it keeps going up, no, as your earnings get higher. So that's what you call a progressive, no, tax system, where those who have more, no, those who earn more, therefore can pay more, and they do pay more. More tax is imposed on them. So it's sort of theoretical justice. Progressive taxation. Fiscal adequacy, it only means that the taxes that government are imposing should more or less be sufficient for the spending, whether it's the short run spending or the long term. Kasi of course there are borrowings involved naman. It cannot be like every year parang balanced ka. Of course, that's difficult to do. Even developed countries have debt. So the tax rates should be sufficient for your spending, current spending and future spending, and taking into account some borrowings as well. And the third is administrative feasibility. No, this is important. No, it's important for any tax system not to be too burdensome. No, in the past, no, it took people multiple forms, multiple days crazy computations just to pay taxes. Parang yun nga, yung the funny thing about it is parang kami na nga magbabayad and yet you're making it hard for us to pay you or give money to you. No? Thankfully, the process has become much, much simpler in recent years. So it shouldn't be burdensome because you don't want to disincentivize people from paying. No? Yun na nga, you're collecting from them and you make it difficult for them. No? Transparent and clear. No? It has to be written on the website. It has to be, the information should be accessible anywhere and it's clear. No? Right now, the good thing is the forms were like dozens of pages. So now it's like down to two to 4 pages yata, if I remember correctly. And the other, which I didn't include here, the other thing here is another good tax system is, aside from it not being burdensome, it's credible. No? Kumbaga, people are scared that if they don't pay taxes, the government will run after them. Kasi if it's not credible, if people don't fear it, parang tatakas lang. Unlike in the US, no, people take it seriously because they know the IRS, their equivalent of the BIR, would come knocking on their doors. Like they don't pay taxes or they don't pay the right taxes. Dito kasi, in the past, no, parang, they won't find out. And so I won't pay taxes. So it has to be credible as well. There's credibility in the tax agency, which is the BIR for us, Bureau of Internal Revenue. Again, and either of you, if you have questions, let me know now later. Okay, this one, this is just a short trivia for you guys. No? You don't necessarily have to memorize this. There's this thing called, kasi conceptually, di ba? Okay, we need to tax people, no? Progressive, dapat ganun. But what specific rates? No? Should it be 10? Should it be 20%, etc., etc.? So there's such a thing called the Laffer curve by a person named Laffer. No? And he's featured in my Canvas course. No? There's a short video of himself, no? Sort of providing a background on the Laffer curve. And the trivia is he just did it in a table napkin while having dinner. No? It's actually a very, it looks, no, from this economist chart, it looks a bit complicated, pero no, it's actually a very simple concept. So ito lang naman yun. No? So it's basically, the question is, so what should be the optimal tax rate for maximum revenues? The basic concept of the Laffer curve is, if the tax rate is, let's take the extreme examples. If the tax rate is 0, that's kind of stupid. No? Government doesn't earn anything. Diba? So you don't want that. Diba? But on the other extreme, no, if the tax rates also are 100% or close to 100%, meaning you get pretty much everything that people earn, then it's also counterproductive because people will just not work anymore, no? Kasi what's the point? Government just gets what I earn. So it will also go back to almost 0. No? There's less incentive for people to work, therefore less incentive for less revenues in the long run. So the basic principle is, if you tax it too low, you might not be getting enough revenues. No? If you tax it naman too high, same thing, no? The curve goes down again kasi people are not incentivized to work kasi the bulk of it just goes naman pala to the government. So why bother working? So in both extremes, no, or near the extremes, no, it's not optimal. The government doesn't get the right amount of revenue. So the optimal tax rate, no, is somewhere in between. That's just the basic point of the Laffer curve. But conceptually, it's easy to understand, but in practice, no, countries still have a hard time defining what is actually the optimal tax rate, whether it's the average tax rate or the tax rate for the top income earner. Sa France, actually, it's closer to 70. Ano. Sa France kasi, in some of these European countries, they have superior social services, but the trade-off there is they really tax the rich high. So here's an Economist article previously, in 2017, that was trying to assess the optimal Laffer curves for different countries. So again, it depends. It differs from country to another. In the Philippines, I don't know. But at least the train law that was passed a few years ago overhauled the tax system, and we've gotten more revenues. And people actually have been paying less taxes. It's at least from what I've observed. But let's leave it to the train group to explore that. So that's the Laffer curve for you. So what are user fees? I don't know if both of you, I don't want to call both of you on the spot. If you are just familiar, you want to take a wild guess. What are user fees? User fees are another major source of government revenues apart from taxes. That's the second important source of government revenues. Would either of you reckon to guess what are user fees? My assumption kasi when I do my slides is it's gonna be interactive. There's only 3 of us, so no pressure, I'll just go straight. Don't worry about it. Later, if I have a question, if you just want to at least try to answer, no problem. So user fees are different from taxes. They're both government revenues, but user fees are fees that I pay or a person pays, that are intended for a direct specific benefit. Taxes kasi, when I remit my taxes, especially income taxes, bahala na yung government how they want to allocate where my taxes go. If they want to pay for the salary of this person or not, or for this infrastructure, bahala sila. User fees are more specific. I pay for something because I will be using it. Taxes kasi more broadly. So for example, the best example here is toll. Tollway. I want to pass this toll to avoid traffic. I will pay a toll to government or the private sector that government has accredited to manage that tollway or to build that tollway. So it's specific. Driver's license, it's not general because those people who do not drive, they will not pay driver's license fees or registration fees. Ako, I wanna use my car on the road. I will use the road. Part of my driver's license fees will be going to road management fees. So, specific ang user fees. This is a second major source of revenue. So you have taxes, and then you also have user fees. Other sources, tariffs, tariffs are very simple. Tariffs are similar to taxes, but they are specific taxes on imports. So, for example, you're using a phone right now or a computer, when that was imported by the company that sold you the tablet or the phone or the computer, they had to pay import taxes. Kasi meron yan eh. Whenever you import something, there is a corresponding import tax. And an import tax is what we normally call tariffs. So for example, yung computer nyo, part of it, 1,000 pesos, sabihin na natin, was paid by your retailer to the Bureau of Customs as an import tax. And it's important to know that this is another source because it's a significant source of revenue also for government. So for example, ito these are old figures, but kasi I sometimes don't want to use 2020 figures kasi yun nga, pandemic, di ba? What happened during the pandemic, it was a weird year. So I keep using sometimes old figures kasi they're more uh, they're less unstable. So ito, for example, see, Bureau of Customs is the one that mostly collects, no, import taxes or what we call tariffs. No? BIR yan na yung mga taxes, indirect, direct. And Treasury naman, the rest from government, corporations, etc. So if you see, no, it's not an insignificant source. No? So if you divide it up, for example, the one in blue, no, that's roughly 1/5, no, of all government revenue. So nothing to scoff at. Of course, the bulk of government revenues is still from taxes that the BIR collects, whether directly or indirectly. See, it's still big, no? 20%, roughly speaking. 6 out of 30. So that's another important source of government revenue. And there's another source. No? So the fourth source, no, important source, is revenues from state-owned corporations. So you're probably familiar with PAGCOR, you're probably familiar with the airport's operator, no, CAAP, for example. No? What else pa ba? PhilHealth, Land Bank, no? All of these government finance, those are actually government run. No? They're what we call GOCCs, or government-owned and controlled corporations. What makes them different from other government agencies is GOCCs are corporations, meaning they are in the business of earning money, making money. That's what differentiates them. No? It's in their charter, in the law that created them, they are supposed to make money for government. So, for example, in 2019, no, what happens is each government-owned and controlled corporation or government financial institution, let's say Land Bank, no, you might be more or DBP, no, you might be familiar with them. What happens is from the profit that they generate, part of it, of course, will go to recovering, paying for their expenses, their day-to-day expenses. But what's left over, usually, they remit back to Treasury. So the Treasury gets that. And then, of course, the Treasury eventually will have all the money, and then that's where government gets its funding from. So these are just a few samples, but there are more. No? There are over, I think, 30 or more national level GOCCs. Marami. And one concept also, no, for your information, government spending also helps boost the economy. Remember our previous formula for GDP. It's C plus I plus G plus NX. Sorry, I'm now shifting gears. I forgot to tell you. So we're now done with the revenue sources. It's all, what are the sources of government? Where does government get its money? So now we're shifting gears naman. No? Government spending, the other side of the coin. No? So as we discussed before, no, it's also important, no, the way and to the extent that government spends for its citizens, it also helps the economy at the macro level. No? Because see, no, ito, C plus I plus G plus NA. So for example, no, during the pandemic, I think this was in one quarter. No? This wasn't full year. No? I think this was the second quarter where the economy contracted the most, no, by 16.7% yata, negative. So it really went down. No, ito. It could have gone down even further if not for government spending. Tingnan nyo, everything else contracted, went down. Obviously, no, lockdown, people were trapped in their homes, were locked in their homes, etc. But government needed to spend, no? So that's had it propped up to a certain extent. Now, if you remove government expenditure, it would have gone even further, yung decline. So government spending, no, aside from addressing the citizens' needs, no, also has an effect in the overall economic performance of the country. And government spending in theory and in most cases in practice reflects government's priorities. No? So in 2020, for example, again, I don't want to use 2021 because that was crafted during at the height of the pandemic. It's kind of a weird budget that we're in right now. So looking back at the 2020, for example, national budget, before this was enacted before the pandemic. Because usually the budget is supposed to be approved before the start of the year. If it just as a trivia, if it doesn't get approved, for example, 2020 is supposed to be approved December 31, 2019. If it doesn't get approved, until it is approved, what will end up happening is the government will have what we call a reenacted budget. So basically, the same levels that they had the previous year, let's say 2019 for 2020, they will just have the same 2019 levels until such time that the budget is approved by Congress and signed by the President. Remember that the budget, commonly known as the General Appropriations Act, is a law. So it needs to be approved by Congress first, then kicked up to Malacanang, and then the President signs the budget. So it is a law, just like any other law, just like the laws that that I assign for homework number 2. So here, if you see, what do you see? Education takes the lion's share. DepEd. That is not just by accident. If you scan the national budget or appropriations in the last 34, let's say last 30 years or so, you'll always see education as having the bulk of the budget. Why is that so? In the Constitution, it's actually written there that the focus of government, the largest share of the budget, more or less, should go to education. It is written actually in the Constitution. That's why usually number 1 is education. But actually, if you go back to the 2020, and I believe even 2021 and the proposed 2022 budget, if you think about it, it's actually, in terms of sectors, it's actually number 2. Number 1 in terms of department, pero actually number 1, at least in 2020, and the same is true, I think, 21 and 22, goes to infrastructure. See, tingnan nyo, infrastructure, the 2 main agencies, sorry, if you have a question, let me just finish this. The 2 main agencies that are in charge of infrastructure are DPWH, Public Works and Highways, and Transportation. So if you combine the budget of these 2 agencies, that will be more than them. Okay. Plus, of course, these other agencies also have their own infrastructure projects like agriculture, even DNR, and DND sometimes. So yun. And since the start of this administration, one of the major mantras is build, 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 which is basically infrastructure build up. Sorry, Enrico, did you have a question? I think you were trying to unmute yourself earlier.
Sir, I was just wondering, because diba sir, noong 2020 may nabalitaan ako na the Duterte administration lessened the budget for disaster risk reduction management. So, but I was just curious if in previous national budget reports, was that part of the top 10 departments? Or as far as you can recall, it's not?
No, if I remember correctly, it wasn't. It's technically correct, no. But the problem was they were comparing it to years where Yolanda provisions for the Yolanda rehabilitation was put in place there, no. So parang they were saying, in the defense of this administration, not necessarily to be an apologist, the problem is they're comparing apples and oranges kasi the previous year's budgets included large appropriations for Yolanda rehabilitation. Pag tapos na naman yung Yolanda rehabilitation, why will it still have a share in the budget? So there's a reason. No? It's not, yung disaster response kasi is, well, number one, it's a function of both the national and the local government. No? So, and for me, it's not, you have to go beyond the numbers. No? If it makes sense lang. Diba? Kumbaga, you can't just say we have to maintain the same budget if the specific line item expenditures don't make sense. Kasi in the past, no, yun nga, lumaki because the budget for Yolanda, which was still ongoing until 2016 or 2017 pa yata, was still there. When that ended, of course, wala nang Yolanda. So, of course, artificially, it seemed like lumiit. No? But if you take that away, no, that line item, parang it's sort of I did a very quick assessment before. No? It's roughly the same. Plus, again, since diba, you guys had a flavor of local governments no, when you did your CBMS assignment. Plus, it's not only the national government that's supposed to spend for disaster response. LGUs, by law, no, they're supposed to carve out, I think, 5% of their budget or 1% for disaster response. So yun. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Timon, did you have a question?
What about the agriculture, sir? Like, how is the historical national budget share for agriculture? Let's say from the start when after 2017, kasi di ba that was the time when ano ba what's the term na yan? WTO.
The rice tarification, you mean?
Yeah, the WTO doesn't, hindi na pwede yung rice tarification ba yun?
Yeah, well, the thing with go ahead.
No, it's the WTO prohibits already the limit of importation, tama ba?
Yun nga. So WTO, it's a very complex regime. No? So many countries, especially developing countries, no, they have to comply with the rules in general terms. No? But they always, by virtue of being developing countries like the Philippines or Thailand or Vietnam, they can always have some exceptions. No? So for the longest time, we've exempted rice. Kasi sa WTO, parang one of the rules is by a certain date, you're no longer supposed to have quantitative restrictions, as you were saying. You're supposed you're supposed to convert, let's say, rice, no, or all crops to a tariff regime. Kumbaga, no longer imposing quotas, but itatarify mo na lang. So for the longest time, we've been writing to the WTO and they've been approving it na, sige, accept natin si rice. So for the longest time. But until we faced the inflation in 2018, no, that's when we opened up. It wasn't just because of pressure from the WTO. That's a secondary reason. No? The primary reason was the food inflation in 2018. But you're absolutely correct. In general, WTO frowns upon quantitative restrictions. To the extent they want tariff levels and hopefully lower tariff levels kahit gradually. Yeah.
How was the funds na sa agriculture from since 2018, 2019, how was the data of the agriculture? Have they already increased it, or I did read
the problem with agriculture, no, it has been severely underfunded since before. Since, let's say, a decade ago. So most of the criticisms when it comes to agriculture focus of the current and the past administrations have been you always say, many are of the rural folk are poor, pero you don't give much attention to agriculture. So budgets haven't really gone up. Uh, More or less halos stable yan. And the disappointing thing with agriculture is it's not only that the levels haven't really gone up. The lion's share goes to, again, rice and corn.
Rice and corn, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Rice and corn are the most uncompetitive crops, no, in the country, and majority goes to that. So yun nga eh. If you attend some lectures na parang, one of criticism, no, and this is a fairly new, recent criticism, which is a correct criticism of Dar, is, pero hindi niya kasalanan because he proposes higher budgets, no, but Congress, of course, dictates the budget, and definitely,
Yeah.
of course, then the president has been trying to, to increase the budget for other things. Pero what ends up happening, rice and corn gets the lion's share, not the high value crop. So parang even if you have the 8-point agenda, but your budget is like this, you cannot really fulfill your entire 8-point agenda kasi your budget tells you of rice and corn. So you're absolutely correct. You're absolutely correct. Yeah, going back to the slide, and thank you for that. No? And feel free, no, if you want to have some conversations about some of these, definitely. No? So, yun nga, there is an infrastructure push by government since the start of the administration. My question to you, if you guys would want to answer, of course, I would just give the answers if you want. Why is infrastructure build up good, or is it good? Why is it good? Kasi the government has been trying to focus on this. No? Of course, mixed results. No? The problem kasi with government, they come up with grand plans, but mabagal. No? Implementation capacity of government has always been weak. No? So you have build, build, build. If you notice, no, if you read the news, no, ngayon lang, no, in the past year or so lang talaga nag-start yung infrastructure build up. The significant ones, the Clark, Subic-Clark corridor to Malolos, etc., the MRT7, some of these large expressways. So yeah, it's good because ito lang, just to run through. No? One is there is a direct increase in economic activity. No? So the construction sector, no, if it increases, no, then directly you open up jobs, no, you open up, if you follow Mark Villar, no, and if you believe the data, no, millions of jobs were created, no, and of course yung mga suppliers, let's say of cement, of equipment, etc., of course, good business for them. So in that sector alone, no, the construction sector, that produces good economic activity and benefits the entire economy in general. Kasi ang daming linkages, no? Of course, where will the workers stay, the transportation, the food that they will buy, the equipment that they source from, diba? So a lot of good interaction. And going beyond the specific construction sector, there's also an increase in economic activity throughout, no, because infrastructure, no, let's say roadways, rail, cargo, shipping, whatever, that enables connectivity. That facilitates trade, no. For example, if before it took you 6 hours to go from this place to another, now it's 4 hours. That's more efficient, no. More trade, more manufacturing. And you can connect, let's say, the farms to the processing hubs. So increase in other sectors as well. It benefits because it is facilitative. NEDA, before the pandemic, no, and I think I included this on Canvas, they estimated at the start of the administration, the infra buildup would add an additional 1.3 trillion to GDP by the end of the administration, and an extra 1.8 million jobs, direct and indirect. Yun nga, direct kasi is those yung mga construction workers. Indirect is yung mga, let's say, mga restaurants around the construction vicinity, et cetera, et cetera. So there are direct and indirect jobs. More hardware shops opening up, then we have more jobs created. So infrastructure buildup is actually good for the country. No? And to give credit to this administration, of course, this administration has a lot of points for improvement. Many economists really agree that infrastructure is the right way to go. And I think true to their promise, no, they're trying to keep it at 5% of GDP. Kasi in the past, the average was only 2-3% at most of GDP. So it's good. This focus is good. All right, next topic naman is fiscal policy naman. Policy is what are the rules, no, when it comes to government taxation or spending. So on the revenue side, no, let's go back to the revenue side. No, policy can also shape behavior. So taxation is not only a way by which government earns money, it can also shape people's behavior or companies' behavior. So for example, yung um, even sa train law, no, this was included there. So before, no, when I was in college, no, and when I started working, I was a heavy smoker before. Um, and it's if either if you are smoking or any of you listening to me right now during this recording, if you're smoking, try to kick that habit. It's a bad habit. It's really hard to quit, no? Especially when I was smoking a pack a day before. No? Dati, I could buy a pack of cigarettes, yung Winston local, no? 20 pesos or less. And then in the past few years, no, they jacked up the taxes, which is good, no? So part of it was disincentivizing behavior, no? Instead of people, no, parang kasi kami before, para mura lang, then okay, it's easy for me to just continue the habit. But when it gets more expensive, then maybe you'll think twice about it. So it can disincentivize behavior. And then part of the train law is raising the taxes on sugary beverages, mga Coke, mga juices that are not natural, no? So sugar taxes as well. So hopefully to curb, no? So to dual purpose, no? To shape behavior and at the same time get revenues. It can also be an incentive naman, no? Kasi kanina is disincentive, no? Incentivize, no? For I don't know if any of you will be in the create law group, no? It can also try to incentivize behavior. You are good. Ayun. So for example, no, create is supposed to incentivize companies from coming in. Parang it's trying to make our corporate taxes more competitive with our ASEAN counterparts. So that's one sweetener. Of course, it's not the only incentive. So yun. Governments can also play around with tax policies, no, to incentivize business build-up or business attraction. So the
But
creative.
that's for that's for the funds for the creator, di ba that's for supporting MSME, di ba? To some part of the money.
Part of it. Well, if you read the law, no, the good thing there is for MSME corporations, what they did, no, one part of create is all about corporate taxes and reducing it. So for all corporations, it was 30% to 25% immediately. But for MSMEs, no, instead of just 25, it's even lower, 20%. So it's not necessarily going to them, no, the proceeds from the corporate taxes, but the tax rates, no, benefit them because from 30% before, it's now down to 20% now, which is a big, big savings. No? So 10%, it's a savings of 10 percentage points, which is kind of big. 1/3, no, if you think about it, no, Kasi from 30 to 20, that's 10 divided by 30. So that's a savings of 33% of taxes. So, yung sinasabi ko dito is the incentives, no? Yun, you want to incentivize more SMEs, no? From building, ano, parang you create business, no? We'll tax you at a lower rate, more savings for you. For big businesses or even outsiders, no? You come to the country, no? You'll pay a lower tax. Ganun. So tax policy can disincentivize behavior if it wants to, or incentivize behavior.
But diba, I think the data of even of the progressive data of create, even the progressive tax plan of create law, I think until 26 ata, diba it's 2026 where it reaches to 20%. Diba it is still the highest, or well, not the lowest on comparing ASEAN countries like Thailand,
Correct.
Indonesia.
Correct. Well,
As a matter of fact,
it will be at least closer. Singapore is definitely lower. I think Singapore is lower than 20. I don't have the numbers with me right now, pero it at least puts us closer to Thailand and
Malaysia.
Definitely. Correct. Yeah, so yun nga, that's one of the complaints, no, parang too late. No, we should have done this years ago. Pero at least we're trying to bumawi.
Yeah, kasi Indonesia was getting ahead na rin eh. Nauna na sila sa...
Correct.
I hope
But
I can
again,
get it correct.
mind you, again, when di ba, we discussed this 2 sessions ago. Mind you, it's not only the tax rates that investors look at. So marami rin namang ibang variables. No? So yun nga sinasabi ng ibang people, no, sometimes, no, businesses, let's say those who need a lot of, who are energy intensive, no, will not locate in the Philippines, because even if you lower the tax rates, energy naman is expensive in the first place in the Philippines. So yun nga, maraming factors. No? Just because you play around with one factor, it doesn't mean, no, they will come flocking. No? You also have to address other factors, which we covered 2 sessions ago. So that's one lesson. No? Sometimes your incentive schemes in terms of taxes can only do so much, because investors, both domestic and foreign, are looking at other variables as well. And taxes are just one. So Indonesia, another reason why foreign investors are not flocking to Indonesia, marami ring problema. No? Mahal ang power, the healthcare system is not that great, the infrastructure is not that great either. So just like us, marami rin silang ibang problems other than tax rates. So that's how fiscal policy can sort of influence public behavior, no, from the revenue side, from the tax rate side. No. On the spending side, it can also influence the economy as a whole. No. There's this famous economist called John Maynard Keynes. No. Government sometimes, especially if the economy is not doing well, no? Again, going back to this, if the economy is not doing well, sometimes the onus falls on government, no, to boost the economy. So sometimes, especially for cases of downturn, no, not pandemic, kasi pandemic is a different animal. But for example, no, kasi all countries, no, what they call experience booms and busts. No? Sometimes government, the economy is really growing rapidly, but sometimes they also encounter contractions or recessions. No? In the case of Keynes, was a big proponent of government intervention, government stimulating the economy by, pag mababa yung economy, government will boost, no? Will pay people more, will provide some stimulus packages or whatever, no? More spending, no? He was actually famous for saying, no, if there's a problem in the economy, no, even if it's not needed, no, government should pay people to dig holes and fill them up. It's a joke. It's an extreme example saying that that's still useful, no? Kasi sometimes there's, you need to employ some person, no? You still have to buy cement, you still have to buy a shovel, no? So that sort of still creates economic activity. So he was all for economic government intervention, especially in times of downturns. Now, the question is it applicable to this pandemic? The problem with the pandemic, yes, tama naman, government intervened, gave some ayuda, provided some support to companies. But the problem is, the assumption of Keynes is, oh, I receive more money from the government, therefore I can go outside, I can buy this, the shops are happy, business is happy, the shops can employ more people or continue to employ people. The problem with the pandemic is people are locked inside. So any government stimulus doesn't have the full strength of the usual government intervention. Yung pandemic was a really different animal. No? Kahit may ayuda, di ba? Parang people were scared, no, to go out. Good thing, no, the cases are really more manageable now. So, yeah, that's another way by which government's fiscal policy on the spending side can influence the country, no? The economic performance of the country. Yung kanina kasi is the revenue side, influencing behavior, revenues, and sometimes attracting investments. On the spending side, it can also influence the country's performance or economic stability. All right, this is the last topic, no, when it comes to fiscal policy and public finance. You'll see this every month or every quarter, every year, no? Government's debt, no, at its highest, no, 11.6 trillion in August, no? Kasi they need time to compute, kaya this only came out end of September last month. No? I'm sure pagdating ng end of October, no, 12 million, 13 million, etc. Is that bad? Is that bad? That's the first question to you guys. Are loans bad? Is it bad? What do you guys think?
From what I know, it's like when it's not on the certain level, it's like if it's not on the certain level of that debt, it's, I think it's healthy, I guess. Alam ko mga 70 ata yung ng 70% ata ang GDP debt.
Okay.
But I think we're still 50.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that later. And thank you for that. That's precisely, the term is not healthy, manageable. No, manageable. So what you're referring to is called debt to GDP ratio. We'll get to that later. No? So here's a simple analogy. To your point, no? To your point, Taino. So ito, just a very easy example, no? A micro example. So for example, there's two people, no, Mario and Maria. You just imagine, no, that they both got a loan. Loan payable, let's say, 1 year. The assumption is, the case is 1 year na loan, 120,000 pesos. And they're supposed to pay the loan equal installments, no? 0 interest, 10,000 per month. No? 120,000 the total loan payable in a year, no interest for simplicity's sake. So they're supposed to pay on a monthly basis 10,000. And Mario's salary is only 15,000. Maria's naman is 100,000 per month. So obviously, who will have a harder time paying the monthly loan? Si Mario. So this is basically our, obviously, no? So because say Mario will obviously have a harder time. And if you, kayo sa accounting, di ba? Or no, or was it finance or both, no? You're now studying. Are you guys studying finance already? Or next sem?
Yes, sir.
Oh, so finance, you're now getting used to ratios. Di ba?
Did we
Uh,
discuss ratio, Enrico? Di ba we
baka
had the
hindi
same
pa.
prof?
Baka hindi pa. Baka later date. Or accounting also, you're supposed to have some ratios as well, no? To assess the financial health. No? So, for example, if you just do a ratio between the debt to income ratio, no, obviously this one is higher than this one. So the debt only represents 10% of Maria's income, whereas si Mario, 2/3 of his salary goes to debt. So obviously Mario. So that is the concept of debt to GDP ratio later. So from a macro perspective, debt is okay as long as you are in a good position to pay it off. As what Timon was saying. So I added this slide here, no, this chart here, no. What they're saying, no, sayang, no, before the pandemic, no, look at this chart, no, we were at the record low. This was the first time in history that we had the lowest debt to GDP ratio, or parang from a macro perspective, it's just debt to income. No? Kasi again, GDP is a country's income. So it's this, no, debt to income. So imagine nyo, no, before the pandemic, our ratio was really at the lowest. Below 14 was the first time in history because we were growing high. Okay naman yung management ng debt natin. But then the pandemic hit, no, and government started to needing to borrow. And you're right, no, it was 58%, but now it's at 60.4% the last time I heard. Ito, focus on the bar here, no. It's much easier to see, no. So it's 60.4 now, no, the latest figure I've heard.
What's the
60.
limit ba, sir?
Ayun, yun nga. I was going to that, no. There really is
Okay.
no limit naman, to be honest, no. Pero creditors, or what we call the credit ratings agencies, start to sort of be worried or concerned, no, when it hits 60. Pag 60 naman, it doesn't mean na, oh, you're really in a bad shape. No? It just means na, oh, better watch it carefully. 70, medyo warning signal na yan. Pero 60, it's still manageable. No? Especially if, yun nga, it's a chicken and egg situation, especially during the pandemic. They're saying nga, economists are saying, you need to, di ba, there are two variables here. It's debt or GDP. In a downturn, if government doesn't spend, then GDP will be kept low. Eh di tataas yung debt to GDP mo. On the other hand naman, if you keep borrowing, but you borrow so that you stimulate the economy, GDP will go up, then baka okay. So it's two factors. So you have to strike a balance. 60 is still okay. 65, 70, now that becomes a bit, a bit of a, they have to be cautious na. Pero sayang, no? Imagine mo from less than 40% to 60%. Pero yun because free vaccines, ayuda, etc., government really had to do it. And actually, the funny thing is, you Google this, no? Most economists are saying, no, kaya pa. Government can still borrow and you can still keep spending kahit tumaas pa ng 65. Don't mind this for now. And actually, to be honest with you guys, I am with them. I side with them. For me, as long as it doesn't still hit 70 plus, okay pa. As long as the spending is on the right things. It will lead to good health outcomes and good economic outcomes. There's always that caveat. Government spending has to be better quality. Hindi lang yung spending for kampanya, for example, or something. So yun. So that is okay. And the funny thing is, if you compare us with other countries, our debt to GDP ratios are really good. Singapore ba? Yes, Singapore has more. It's more than 100% for them. The US debt to GDP ratio is actually more than 100%, meaning their debt is higher, their outstanding debt is higher than their income as a country. No? The good thing lang naman with developed countries is the creditors trust them. Eventually, they will pay them back. Pero no, um, even the developed countries, sometimes they're borrowing so much. So tayo actually, if you compare us with ASEAN, we're okay. We're doing okay. One of the lowest pa, even at 60%. So okay pa tayo. So don't worry. So again, the basic point here is that is okay as long as you are in a good position to pay it off. Kasi yun nga, most of sometimes the newspapers will be very sensationalist. Ay, grabe, 16-year high, ganun. Pero again, that is okay for two things, no? If it's if it's if borrowing is being done for the right spending, kasi marami ding waste, no? And second, if the if the income naman of the country as measured by GDP terms, if it's able to afford it. Ang ano naman dito, you're not paying the debt tomorrow. Most debt naman, especially if it's from the ADB, the World Bank, from the Japanese, 20, 30, 50 years, really long and very concessional rates. So you can pay it off eventually. So if you have friends, no, who are, fear-mongering friends, so grabe yung debt natin, sabihin nyo, okay pa yan. We're still okay. We're still okay. But you have to watch out for, is the borrowing going to the right spending? So that's another question mark. And there is a term for this. No? It's called credit rating. This is a useful concept when you're assessing a country, a person, or a corporation. The credit worthiness. Credit rating lang naman means, no, and I like the DOF, sometimes they come out with very simple, minsan Tagalog pa nga, no, very simple explanations of sometimes complex terms. So credit rating is an important thing. So any entity, whether that's a person, a country, or a corporation, can be subjected to a credit rating. Basically, a credit rating means it's your credit worthiness, whether you are a risky borrower that you probably might not be able to pay it off in the long run, or whether you are a potentially trusted borrower. So, and the thing to note about this, no, if let's say a bank, I want to get a loan, no? If they notice that you have been paying off your debts before, no, you will have a good credit rating. Your salary is okay, your past history of paying back your loans is okay, then you will have a good credit rating. And the good thing with that is, if you are more credit worthy, your interest rates will be lower. In the Philippines, we actually are what we call investment grade, no? Very low risk. We are actually 2 notches above investment grade. Yun yung tawag nila for, that's sort of the threshold by which creditors are like, very safe. You put your money there, don't worry, they'll be able to pay it back. So for the past at least 10 years, no, our credit rating has been investment grade and beyond. In this administration, we've even improved 2 notches, I think. And I think I included some graphics in your Canvas course, on this, no, more data, no? Parang BBAA. Credit ratings agencies use these very weird terms, weird classifications. So, but all you have to think here is, our debt levels are still okay. Credit rating, and these are done by independent third-party international experts, saying that our credit standing is still okay. The good thing with having a good credit rating is, one, we can still borrow if needed. Second, the interest is lower. So good din yun. Kasi if your interests are high, then debt becomes more onerous, more difficult, more burdensome. I'd like to end this class, no, by just asking one-on-one na lang yata tayo. Is that good? Hindi, si Rico is still there. Kala ko, you left us, Rico. No? So the last thing is, I just wanted to get your thoughts. No, I saw this recently. No, ayun, last week na, October 19. Campaign season na, no? So there's, a lot of these different groups, no, proposing different things. So I found this last week. No? So there's this NGO called Freedom from Debt Coalition. They've been around for the last 3 or 4 decades. No? They're basically saying, no, the presidential boss should support debt condonation, debt cancellation. Basically, the government should tell the creditors, we will no longer pay debt, no? Forgive nyo na lang kami. And then we'll have more funds. What do you guys think of this? Just to wrap up this topic. What do you guys think of this? Worth pursuing, thinking about, what do you guys think? Sige, Taiman.
I think that's a bad policy. Like, parang it's a bad policy that, I mean, it would really stray away your creditors talaga. Parang it's unrealistic talaga.
Exactly. No, it's funny, no, but many, surprisingly, many people, it's a very populist, but many people actually would support this. No, it rings. For some people, they will support this. But you're right, no. Practically speaking, the moment you basically turn your back on your creditors, no, what would happen if you need to borrow in the future? Wala na. Either you'll get a very high interest rate or you won't be able to borrow at all. Diba? So yun nga. So it's kind of stupid if you ask me. But trust me, this is a paradigm that many people subscribe to. So if you have friends who have this paradigm, tell them, that's a stupid idea. Yun lang, just wanted to end with this. No? So yun nga, because the debt, for me, the debt situation, the concept of debt has been, it's been abused, no? And it's been sensationalized, and there's a lot of misinformation going. So I just wanted to spend some time in this class and in Canvas, no? Just to demystify this whole thing about that. So yun lang. I think that's my last slide, no? And Timon, by the way, I replied to your email. Sorry it took me some time, but I hope that.
It's okay. It's a weekend. And I cannot reply because my classes are heavy. I mean, my midterms is heavy.
No problem. No. But if you want, no, I'm free naman if you want to do a consultation or just chat about some of these things. Go ahead. Si Rico, did you want
Sa
to say
create
something?
bill.
Sa create, I would muna, you confer with your groupmates muna para, diba, you collect your questions and then we do a consultation with the group. And ask your group to help out as well. Wag lang ikaw. Even if you're so excited about it. Of course.
Hindi ako sure kung makukuha ko. Hindi ako sure kung makukuha ko, Kate.
But if you have a quick question now, sure, walang problema. And Rico, I don't know, magkano pa kayo, Rico?
Sir, siguro, ako personally, I want to set a consultation for you kasi MSME yung topic na napunta sa amin. But I'll have to confer with my group first and email you na lang.
Sige. But yun nga. So November 16, what I'm gonna do, kasi 6 groups kayo, di ba? So our weekly schedule naman is 3 hours. So I'll be doing 30-minute blocks for all of you. So take the 30 minutes. No? If that's not sufficient, we can still have another schedule. Pero my suggestion is para hindi pa ulit-ulit then and everyone hears they might have the same questions, no? Let's consult as a group para better. So I don't expect naman na I would expect that you will have a more comprehensive list of questions as we go nearer to the deadline. Diba? So, yeah. Unless may quick questions kayo on the topic, Taimon or Rico?
None naman for me so far, sir.
Ikaw, Taimon. I mean, you can if you want.
How long ba ang create bill? How long is the PDF document of create bill?
No, I'm not expecting all of you to read the law. No? I mean, sometimes even me, no, I have a hard time. I'm not a lawyer, so it's hard. No? So you consult with primers. No? You consult with primers. You consult with guides. No? I'm not expecting you to really read the law line by line. You'll fall asleep. You're free to do so if you want.
Akala ko mga 3 pages lang.
No. Laws are, the funny thing with Philippine laws, no? In other countries, hindi. The laws are very, very short. Then they have what they call the IRRs, the implementing rules and regulations that are longer. No? Dito hindi, no? The laws are very long. No? There's a law, no? The new customs modernization law was 600 pages long yata or something. Create is not super long, no? Pero mahaba din. At least 20 pages or 30. Mahaba din ang create. So I encourage that you guys consult primers or guides. No? Dami dyan sa internet. But be sure that you're consulting trusted sources. And I'll try to post some good sources where you can draw from. All right? Okay tayo. And thanks to both of you for attending. At least it's less lonely. Kasi ako, even if no one shows up, I will still pursue this. No? Pero just among the three of us, no, are my lectures not interesting, or it's just the volume of work that you guys are subjected to? Kasi in the past naman, medyo full attendance naman ako eh. I was just wondering if walang kwenta yung lectures ko. I mean, not to, or is it just the workload talaga?
Sir, for me, I don't think it's your lectures. I think your lectures are very interesting. And actually, my group, they find your lectures interesting as well. Siguro kasi, sir, yung volume ng ibang subjects.
Workload.
Yeah, yung workload. Pati they keep posting sa announcements. Like, oh, meeting tomorrow.
Okay.
Whereas ito, parang it's understood that it's a recurring meeting. So I guess hindi lang siguro na paano pa, na-gets ng iba agad yung importance. But I'm not sure, sir. It's just, that's
Okay.
just me.
Okay. And thanks for that. Thanks for the feedback. Kasi yun lang, I'm just a bit worried. Baka, is it the material or baka nga, it's really the workload as well. Yeah, thanks for that feedback. All right.
Honestly, ano ba? It's like the materials mostly talaga are like, for me, it's like mostly these are reviews na eh. So parang I do know this na rin because I do review in Inquirer. I will type the name so that lang. I do type with and
Yeah.
Villegas. That's what I follow.
Yeah, si Bernie Villegas, he shall have it, definitely. Yeah.
That's what I follow. So that's why parang it's easy for me to trail. And then of course, since I've read this all his inquirers for like 2 years, that's so
Yeah.
painful. So yeah, that's why it's easy to So it's easy for me to follow. And well, on the materials one, it's nice naman. I mean, those are database naman. I mean, relevant. I mean, it's nice that you could also open on some like sina Balisakan, and etc. and so on. But yun nga, sometimes it's, well, I mean, busy. But sometimes I do read it naman.
Yeah. No worries. And I'll send you another. I keep forgetting to I have a project. I used to have a project with the American Chamber of Commerce. They have a service called News Clips. So they basically every day they scour through the newspapers and basically pluck out the more significant economic and business news. No? So I'll type it up in the chat box. No? You can subscribe there actually. So to get a daily news clipping, basically, you can subscribe to that, and it's really good. There's a subscribe button there. No? So every day you'll get like a curated list set of articles. All right. Oh, sige, you guys might be hungry now. Yung wife ko din is waiting for me.
Yeah, I'm finishing also my theology orals then. Oh my God.
Uh,
Tas Enrico, are you gonna study Upman pa?
Yeah,
Every
later.
class is, yeah, I'm gonna study pa
Yung orals
Thursday,
pa-
Gab. Huh?
Ockman is actually nice. That used to be my favorite. No? In grad school, no? May Ockman version. Din.
Oh yeah, sir. You love Offman.
Yeah. It's called management science also. So when I did my grad school, favorite ko yan.
I see, sir. I see.
Okay.
I hope you have a nice dinner, sir.
Yeah, kayo
Good night.
din. Don't work too hard. Okay, relax lang. At least next week, have a decent break next week as well.
All right, sir. Thank
Sige.
you, sir.
Good night,
Thanks, guys.
Enrico.
Thanks
Good
for
night, sir.
joining. Sige, bye.
Bye.